I remember that night like it burned into my mind. I was sitting on the edge of the courtyard with my friends, laughing over some stupid joke about our midterm disaster when Mia walked in. She looked different. Cold, sharp, like she had something on her mind that she couldn't wait to say. "Hey," I called, waving. She glanced at me, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We need to talk," she said, her tone flat. I frowned. "Here? Now?" My friends started drifting away, sensing the tension, and I felt my chest tighten. "Yes, now," she replied. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Okay, let's go somewhere quiet." We walked a few steps away, far enough to hear ourselves but still in view. "What's wrong?" I asked, though I already had a bad feeling. She stopped and crossed her arms. "I can't do this anymore," she said. I laughed nervously. "Do what?" Her eyes flashed and my stomach dropped. I don't think you have what it takes. You're sweet, but you're not enough for me. You never will be." The words hit me like a punch. I stumbled backwards slightly, trying to process them. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" My voice was louder than I meant it to be. She nodded, as if confirming something obvious. "I am. I'm done." I swallowed hard. "But I thought we were happy. I thought we were going to—" "You thought wrong," she interrupted, cutting me off sharply. "I need someone who can keep up, someone who can make something of themselves. You're not it." My friends were staring now, their eyes wide, awkward silence stretching between us. I felt my face burning, humiliation creeping in with every heartbeat. "Mia, please. Don't do this here, not like this," I whispered, desperation rising. She shrugged, as if my feelings were just another inconvenience. "It's already done," she said. "I've made my choice. You need to understand that." I stumbled to find words, but none came. I could feel my friends shifting behind me, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. "You're making a mistake," I said finally, trying to sound firm, though my voice trembled. "No," she said softly, almost pityingly. "I've never been more certain about anything in my life. You'll thank me someday." That sentence cut deeper than I expected. "Mia, I love you. I thought we were. I don't even know what we are to each other anymore." She looked away, indifferent. "You'll get over it. You'll learn. I'm just ahead of you." I felt a sudden rush of anger, tears I didn't want to admit creeping in. "So that's it? You just leave me? Just like that?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second, like she might have said something different, but then she turned and walked away. I wanted to call her back, to scream, to beg, but my voice caught in my throat. My friends came closer, murmuring things I couldn't hear, their pity filling me with shame. I sank to the ground where she had left me, staring at nothing. I couldn't breathe. My mind spun with anger, disbelief, and a gnawing sense of worthlessness. "I'm not enough. I'm really not enough," I muttered to myself over and over. I hated the words and hated that they felt true. The night closed in around me, and I realized with a bitter clarity that nothing would ever feel the same again. I barely recognized myself these days. Every morning I forced myself out of bed, dragged through lectures, but my mind kept looping over Mia's words. "You're not enough." I could hear her voice even in the quietest moments. My friends tried to talk to me, but I just nodded and mumbled, "I'm fine," because I didn't want them to see me unravel. One evening I saw her across the campus lawn, laughing with someone new. "Mia," I whispered under my breath, my stomach twisting. That guy with her, tall, confident, the kind of person who always looked like he owned the world, he wasn't me. I clenched my fist. I should have felt anger, maybe jealousy, but all I felt was hollow, like a part of me had been ripped out. I tried to focus on my notes in the library, but every word blurred. I muttered aloud, "Why am I so useless?" The librarian glanced at me, eyebrow raised, and I buried my face in my hands. "I can't do this anymore," I admitted, voice barely audible. At that moment, a soft but firm voice interrupted my spiral. "You're wasting your grief," the man said. I looked up. Professor Liang stood there, calm, observing me as if he could read everything I was thinking. "Professor." I started, but he held up a hand. "Sit," he said. "Talk if you want. Or don't. I'll wait." I hesitated, then let the words tumble out. She left me. And now she's with someone else. He's everything I'm not. I can't focus. I don't know how to be enough." Professor Liang nodded slowly, almost like he expected me to say it. "Life is rarely fair," he said, voice low. "Sometimes people take what isn't theirs, sometimes they leave you behind. You can waste yourself wishing it were different, or you can remake yourself from what remains." I blinked. Remake myself? Oh. I'm broken. He leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. You're not broken. You're unfinished. Every failure, every humiliation, it's raw material. Build with it. Sculpt it into who you want to become. I stared at him, unsure whether to feel inspired or even angrier. And what about her? I asked. The person who abandoned me? He smiled faintly, almost cruelly. She's a chapter, not your whole story. Let her choices teach you, not define you. I wanted to argue, to shout, but the calm authority in his eyes quieted me. I left the library that evening, the weight in my chest still there, but smaller, more manageable. I saw Mia and her new boyfriend again on campus, holding hands, laughing. My first instinct was to look away, but I caught their eyes. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt distant, observing, calculating. I whispered to myself, one day I'll be someone she can't ignore. Someone she regrets leaving. That thought felt dangerous and electric at the same time. I walked back to my small apartment, alone but awake for the first time in weeks. I opened my laptop and instead of scrolling mindlessly, I typed a list, skills to learn, things to achieve, a path forward. It was tentative, but it existed. I could feel a spark, small but undeniable, growing inside me. The emptiness was still there, but now it hummed with potential instead of despair. And for the first time since she walked away, I felt like I could take control of my own story. I slammed my textbook shut and muttered, I'm not letting her words control me anymore. The apartment felt smaller than usual, suffocating almost, but I forced myself up. I'll start with something I can control, I told my reflection in the mirror. The next morning, I signed up for a part-time job at a small electronics shop. Mr. Chin, the owner, eyed me skeptically. You've never worked here before? He asked. No, but I can learn, I said quickly, trying to mask my nervousness. Good, he replied, because we don't have time for slow learners. That first week was brutal. I spilled coffee on a customer's laptop and miscalculated a bill. Careful. Mr. Chin snapped, but he didn't fire me. Instead, he pulled me aside. Listen, mistakes are your teachers. You pay attention or you fail. I nodded, cheeks burning, but I felt something stir inside, a mix of frustration and determination. I won't fail, I whispered. Each day, I stayed later than required, learning inventory systems, sales tactics, even negotiating with suppliers. Why do you push yourself so hard? Mr. Chin asked one evening as we counted stock. I shrugged. I want to be better. Not just for me, but for everything I lost. He nodded slowly. Good. Ambition without patience is useless. Remember that. Outside, I noticed Mia and her new boyfriend walking past the shop window. I forced myself to look away, but my chest tightened. One day, I muttered under my breath, I'll be more than she ever imagined. After a month, Mr. Chin handed me a small ledger. Here, he said, start tracking orders and expenses. See patterns. Opportunities hide in plain sight. I spent hours analyzing numbers, discovering small inefficiencies in the store's supply chain. This could work, I whispered, excitement threading through my exhaustion. I started sketching notes late at night, imagining how I could expand, improve, even automate some processes. The spark wasn't just survival, it was strategy. You're thinking too much, Mr. Chin teased one evening when he noticed my scribbles. Thinking leads to mistakes, I argued, smiling despite the tension. Or it leads to growth, he said, and something in his words clicked. I realized that every hour I spent learning, failing, and experimenting was turning my anger into fuel. The humiliation from Mia's words, the ache of watching her move on, it wasn't destroying me anymore. It was shaping me. I whispered to myself as I closed the ledger, I'll take every lesson she never thought I could handle. I'll turn it into something she can't ignore. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control, like I was starting to pull my life out of the shadows she left behind. I didn't know where this path would take me, but I knew one thing, I wasn't going to stop. I couldn't stop staring at the small stack of invoices on my desk. I did it, I whispered, almost in disbelief. My first order had gone through without mistakes, and for the first time the numbers added up. This actually worked. Mr. Chin leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. I see you finally stopped panicking, he said, smirking. Feels different, doesn't it? I nodded, heart still racing. It's exhilarating. I never thought I could do this. He chuckled. Good. Don't forget it. Confidence is half the battle. As I packed the next shipment, my phone buzzed. A message popped up. Congrats on your first sale. Heard good things. I frowned. Who even knew about this? I hesitated, then tapped the reply. Thanks. Appreciate it. Moments later, a man walked into the shop. Clean-cut, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that made you notice him immediately. "Leo," he said, extending a hand. "I've been keeping an eye on your work." I shook it, uneasy. "I'm flattered?" He laughed, but there was an edge to it. "Don't mistake it for kindness. Business isn't polite. It's brutal. One misstep and you're out." My chest tightened, but I smiled. "I've handled worse." He raised an eyebrow. "Worse? From who?" I swallowed, remembering Mia. "Personal stuff. It taught me to adapt." He nodded slowly. "Good. You'll need that. You're not just competing with people. You're competing with who you were yesterday." His words lingered, a strange mixture of threat and advice. I guess I'll keep that in mind," I muttered. He smirked. "Just remember, luck runs out. Skill doesn't. Don't let someone else write your story for you." I watched him leave and the shop felt quieter, almost smaller. My first taste of success was thrilling, yes, but it carried weight I hadn't expected. I sank into my chair, thinking of Mia, the way she walked away like I was invisible. "She wouldn't believe this if she saw me now," I whispered to myself. But the thought didn't sting as sharply as before. Instead, it ignited something inside, a mix of pride, lingering pain, and a simmering desire to prove I was more than her dismissal. I leaned back, reviewing the orders, calculating projections, making notes of what to improve. "Every step counts," I muttered. The small victories tasted sweet, but I knew they were just the beginning. A plan started forming in my mind, careful and measured, like a chess game I was finally learning to play. "I'll get better, stronger," I said quietly. "And I won't just survive, I'll excel." Even as I felt satisfaction, a small nagging thought crept in. What if Mia saw me now? What if she realized she'd misjudged me? I shook my head. That wasn't my goal, not yet. The focus was me, my growth, my future. But deep down, I knew that someday our paths would cross again. I smiled faintly, letting that thought linger, letting it fuel me without controlling me. "This is only the beginning," I said aloud. "And when the time comes, I'll be ready." I didn't expect to see her. Not here, at the university reunion years after she walked out of my life. I was leaning against the wall, holding a glass of soda, when I saw her enter, all poised and confident. My stomach tightened. "Mia," I muttered under my breath. She glanced at me, and for the briefest second, her expression faltered. Then it hardened into the familiar mask of cool indifference. I took a deep breath and approached her. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice steady. She looked me over, eyes sharp. "Hello," she replied, polite but distant. My friends from university hovered nearby, whispering and pointing. I ignored them. "You look different," I said, unsure if I meant it as a compliment or a challenge. She smiled faintly, not quite reaching her eyes. "So do you," she said. "You seem successful." My chest tightened. "I've been working hard," I said simply. She nodded, almost impressed. "I heard about your business. You've done well for yourself." I raised an eyebrow. "And you? Still climbing the ladder?" There was a hesitation in her eyes I hadn't seen before. "Yes," she said finally. "Things are fine." I studied her closely. There was a tension beneath her confident exterior, a hint of uncertainty. "Fine," I repeated, a small smirk tugging at my lips. "That doesn't sound convincing." She shifted, glancing away for a fraction of a second. "It's complicated," she admitted, voice quieter than I expected. I felt a flicker of something, regret, maybe guilt, but I stayed composed. "Complicated how?" I asked, leaning casually against the table. She shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Life is never simple." I guess I didn't realize what I had before it was gone. My pulse quickened. Was this the apology I never got? Or just her testing me? I kept my voice calm. "You didn't realize? Or you just didn't care?" She winced slightly, but she answered. "I cared in my own way, but I made mistakes. I know that now." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. "You walked away," I said softly. "You told me I wasn't enough." Her eyes glistened for a moment, but she blinked it away. "I was young and selfish. I thought I knew what I wanted. I didn't." My chest ached, but I swallowed my anger. "And now?" I asked. "Now she paused, struggling for words. "Now I'm learning to face the consequences of my choices," she said finally. I nodded slowly, feeling a mix of satisfaction and lingering pain. "That's good to hear," I said. We stood in silence, the sounds of laughter and chatter around us fading. I realized I didn't need to say more, didn't need to forgive or confront her fully. The moment was enough. "Well, I should get back to the others," she said, turning slightly hesitant. I took a step back. Yes, of course. It was interesting seeing you again, I said, voice calm, almost neutral. She nodded and walked away, and I watched her go, noting the subtle cracks in her confidence that weren't there before. I exhaled quietly, feeling a strange sense of pride. I hadn't lost control, hadn't let my emotions run me. And yet, there was still a tension lingering inside me, unresolved. I turned back to the room, smiling faintly to myself. I'm not the same boy you left behind, I whispered, and for the first time in years I truly believed it. I sat at my small office desk, staring at the spreadsheet and muttering, this has to work. The next shipment was bigger, the stakes higher, and I could feel my pulse in every fingertip. Mr. Chin leaned against the doorframe. You're pushing too hard, he said, but there was pride in his eyes. I have to, I replied. I can't stop now. Not when I'm finally ahead. He shook his head, smiling faintly. Ambition can blind you. Remember, you need allies, not just speed. I nodded, already thinking about partnerships I could form. A week later, I met Lin, a supplier with a sharp eye for quality. I've heard good things, Lin said, shaking my hand. But why should I work with you? I leaned forward. Because I deliver results. On time, every time. And I treat my partners like they matter. He studied me for a long moment. All right. Let's see if you're as reliable as you claim. I grinned, feeling the spark of momentum. Then came the problem, Leo. I heard he'd been whispering to my clients, spreading doubts. I could feel anger rising, but I forced myself to smile. I'll handle this, I told Mr. Chin. He nodded. Do it smart. Don't get emotional. The next day I called Leo. I hear you've been talking about me, I said, calm but firm. There was a pause on the other end. I'm just giving advice, he replied. To my clients. Advice? I repeated, voice steady. Funny how it always benefits you, huh? Listen, I don't need your help and I don't need your doubts. But here's the thing, I know exactly what I'm doing. One false move from you and it won't end well. He laughed, but it sounded forced. We'll see, he said and hung up. I exhaled, letting the tension drain. The game was on, but I felt ready. Over the next few weeks, I expanded my operations, hiring employees I could trust. Remember to train the new staff on quality control, I told May, my assistant. We can't afford mistakes. She nodded. Understood. I'll make sure everything is perfect. I watched them work, the sense of building something real filling me with pride. Each partnership I formed, each challenge I overcame, reminded me how far I had come. And somewhere in the background, I knew Mia was hearing whispers about my success. I imagined the questions she might ask herself, the curiosity, the regret. It didn't drive me, but it fueled a quiet satisfaction. One evening, after closing a deal with a key client, I heard footsteps behind me. You're busy, said a familiar voice. I turned slightly, just a glimpse of her name in an email subject line. Mia? I muttered under my breath, a flash of something electric in my chest. But I shook it off. Focus. Work. The Empire couldn't wait for old ghosts. I returned to reviewing projections, reminding myself that this was my world now. Leo tried again, this time with a subtle offer to collaborate, but I saw through it. Thanks, but no, I said aloud to my phone, smirking. I'll do this my way. The employees I trained moved with confidence, the partnerships held steady, and I realized that my success wasn't just numbers. It was resilience, strategy, and the fire that Mia's rejection had lit in me years ago. I sat back, hands behind my head, and whispered, this is only the beginning. And no one can stop it, not Leo, not anyone else. Not even her. I could feel the Empire growing under my hands, tangible and unstoppable. I didn't expect her again. Not like this, at a networking event, dressed in a tailored suit, holding a glass of wine like she belonged. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to stay calm. Mia? I said, keeping my voice steady. She turned, smiled faintly, and tilted her head. I didn't expect to see you here, she said. You look, well. I nodded. Thanks. You too. Her smile widened, almost too perfect, and I felt that old suspicion creep in. I've been following your progress, she added casually. Impressive work. I raised an eyebrow. Is that admiration or curiosity? She laughed lightly, the sound practiced. Maybe a little of both. I studied her, noting the way she glanced at the other attendees, her circle of friends hovering nearby. They all nodded in my direction, smiles polite but calculating. I see you brought your team, I said. She looked at them, then back at me. Of course. Networking is easier with support. I forced a chuckle. Right. Makes sense. A memory flashed. The way she manipulated situations back in university, whispering doubts into my friends' ears, turning them against me. I remembered the casual cruelty in her tone, the way she made rejection feel like a lesson for my inadequacy. My chest tightened, but I didn't let it show. So, how did you hear about my company? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She shrugged. Word travels fast. People notice talent. Even ones who were overlooked before. I felt a flicker of amusement tinged with anger. Overlooked, huh? She met my gaze steadily. I admit I underestimated you once. That was a mistake. I smiled faintly, the moral superiority warming me inside. We all make mistakes, I said. Some just learn faster than others. She tilted her head, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. And what have you learned? I leaned back, pretending to consider. Patience, strategy, and that people often reveal their true colors when given a choice. She blinked, a flash of unease crossing her face before she masked it. I see. And are you satisfied now? I shrugged casually. Satisfaction is temporary. Growth isn't. But I am in control. I glanced at her friends again, noticing their subtle, cautious positioning, their polite smiles. They were protective of her, or perhaps just curious, but they didn't intimidate me. You're very composed, she said softly. It's different from the old days. Old days are gone, I replied. I've moved forward. A part of me itched to confront her, to ask why she came back, to challenge her motives directly. I imagined pulling her aside, letting her taste the humiliation I once felt, but I didn't. Instead, I let the tension hang between us, a silent acknowledgement of power and growth. Well, she said finally, turning to her friends, it was good to see you. Likewise, I said, voice calm. She walked away, her group following, and I watched them go. The temptation to call her back, to confront her fully, gnawed at me. But I smiled faintly, savoring the moral high ground. I whispered under my breath, soon, very soon, everything will come full circle. I turned back to my own circle, letting the conversation continue around me, feeling both the thrill of control and the pull of unfinished business. I slammed my laptop shut and muttered, not today, not like this. The orders weren't matching, inventory was off, and every client seemed to call with complaints at the same time. My phone buzzed. It was Leo. Running into some problems, huh? His tone was dripping with smug satisfaction. I gritted my teeth. You're enjoying this, aren't you? He laughed, low and deliberate. Someone has to keep you on your toes. Don't let it get to you. I stared at the screen, seeing the chaos he'd orchestrated behind the scenes. You won't get me. I've handled worse than this. Oh, I know, he replied. But can you handle it without losing control? I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. Watch me. Later, Mia's name flashed on my phone screen. I hesitated, then answered. Yes. She sounded casual, but I could hear the hesitation. I heard about the problems at your company. Are you okay? I wanted to snap, to remind her that she had no right to check in, but something held me back. It's business. I'll manage, I said, tone flat. I see, she said softly. There was a pause. I hope you know I never meant to undermine you before. I just didn't understand you. My chest tightened. I didn't trust her, not fully. I understand you now, I said, choosing my words carefully. You have to face consequences just like everyone else. I know, she murmured, voice small. I guess I'm seeing it now. I hung up, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to call her back, to confront her, to see if she truly felt regret. But the other part of me, the part that had grown stronger, told me to stay focused. Leo's interference wasn't going to stop me. I opened the ledger again, reviewing every transaction, every supply chain detail. If he thinks he can break me, he's wrong, I whispered. Hours passed and the pressure only increased. Every mistake had to be corrected, every client reassured. By evening, I finally breathed, leaning back in my chair. It's done, for now, I said, voice hoarse. My employees looked exhausted, but their trust in me never wavered. Good work, everyone, I said aloud. We survived. Leo called again. I answered calmly. Did you enjoy watching the chaos? I asked. Maybe, he said, laughing. But you adapted. I'll give you that. Not everyone can handle it. I smiled faintly, hiding the exhaustion. Next time, don't underestimate me. He paused. We'll see. The call ended. I exhaled, thinking about Mia again. Did she feel guilty? Or was it just curiosity? I wanted to confront her fully, to test her remorse, but I resisted. I had learned restraint. I sat alone in the office, staring at the city lights through the window. My body ached, my mind raced, but the sense of control had returned. I whispered to myself, I survived. I adapted. I'll be stronger next time. And yet, deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. Leo wouldn't stop. Mia's shadow lingered. The crisis was over for now, but the cost, my energy, my patience, my nights of restless calculation, was high. I rubbed my temples and muttered, tomorrow the game continues. I leaned back in my chair, studying the market trends on my laptop. Everything has to line up perfectly, I muttered to myself. My employees buzzed around, finishing preparations for the next client meeting. May looked at me curious. Are you sure this will work? I smiled faintly. Trust me. Leo won't see it coming. Later, I picked up the phone and called one of my key partners. I've got a plan to stabilize the supply chain and expand reach, I said. It's risky, but the payoff is huge if executed correctly. There was silence for a moment. Go on, my partner said finally. I outlined the steps carefully, emphasizing efficiency, trust, and timing. Everything has to be executed exactly as discussed, I warned. Any deviation and it could backfire. Understood, my partner replied. By mid-afternoon, the maneuver was in motion. Orders were rerouted, contracts renegotiated, and Leo's attempts to interfere became irrelevant. I watched from my office, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Everything is falling into place, I whispered. I didn't feel gloating, just satisfaction. Calm, collected, measured. Later, Leo barged into the office, face flushed. What did you do? He demanded. I looked up, voice steady. I adapted. You underestimated me. That's all. His eyes narrowed. This isn't over. I shook my head slightly. It is for now. You've exhausted your options. He stormed out, leaving the office in tense silence. I let out a slow breath. That wasn't so bad, I said, more to myself than anyone else. May looked impressed. You were ruthless. I smiled faintly. Ruthless? No, strategic. There's a difference. Hours later, a message pinged on my phone. Mia. Heard about the new contracts. Impressive. I stared at it, reading and rereading. My pulse quickened slightly. I typed a brief reply, thanks. She didn't respond further and I let it go. But I imagined her reading the news, realizing how my maneuver had indirectly humiliated her in front of her professional peers. That thought made my chest tighten slightly, a mixture of vindication and restraint. It's not about her, I whispered under my breath. It's about me, my growth. I called another partner to confirm that all orders were secure and that Leo's influence was now negligible. Everything looks perfect, I said. Good. Make sure it stays that way. After the call, I stared out the window at the city skyline. I remembered the boy who used to sit in the courtyard, humiliated, crushed by Mia's words. He would have panicked, spiraled, made mistakes. I had transformed. Calm, controlled, disciplined. Even as I enjoyed the silent payback, I reminded myself not to get carried away. This was just business. And yet, a flicker of satisfaction lingered. I remembered her subtle regret in the past weeks, the messages, the whispers, and I allowed myself a quiet acknowledgement. She had underestimated me once and now, indirectly, she felt the consequences. But I didn't gloat openly. I didn't need to. The moral victory was mine, hidden behind calm professionalism. Control, I whispered to myself. That's the difference between winning and losing. As the evening approached, I began preparing for the next steps, knowing that Leo would regroup, that Mia might test me again. But I was ready. Every challenge, every manipulation, every setback had shaped me. I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment, and whispered with quiet certainty, I'm not the same boy you left behind. I'm stronger, smarter, and in control. And this is just the beginning. I found her sitting alone in a quiet corner of the cafe, nervously twisting the handle of her coffee cup. I approached slowly. Mia, I said, calm but deliberate. She looked up, startled, eyes widening slightly. Oh, hi, she stammered. I didn't expect you to come here. I pulled out a chair and sat without asking. I wanted to talk. Just us. She nodded, hesitant. Okay, just us. Silence hung for a moment. I studied her, noticing the tension in her shoulders, the subtle quiver in her voice. You've changed, she said finally. I mean you seem different. I smirked faintly. I've grown. Learned a lot since university. Her gaze dropped. I guess I underestimated you. I was wrong. I leaned forward slightly. Wrong about what, Mia? She bit her lip, struggling. About us. About you. About everything. I kept my tone neutral. You left telling me I wasn't enough. That hurt. Her eyes filled with guilt. I know. I didn't understand myself back then. I was selfish, arrogant. I thought I knew what I wanted, but I was immature. I nodded slowly, letting her words settle. And now? I asked softly. She swallowed, her hands clenching. Now, I see what I lost. I see how much I've failed, how badly I judged you. I felt a twinge of old anger, but I didn't let it show. Do you? I asked quietly, watching her squirm under the weight of truth. Yes, she whispered. I tried to move on, to be happy, but nothing ever felt right. I kept comparing to what you became. And it's uncomfortable. I realize now that her voice faltered. I let her struggle, letting her own conscience speak. I know you've been successful, she continued, voice barely audible. It's painful because I thought I made the right choices. But I see that I've been shallow, petty, and jealous. My heart tightened, but I maintained composure. You're admitting it, I said softly. Yes, she said, tears forming. I was jealous of you, of your determination, your growth. And I left a boy who was worth more than I realized. I took a slow breath. Mia, I don't need to hear apologies. I needed you to understand what you lost and what I became despite it. She looked at me, eyes wide, filled with both regret and something like awe. You're different, she whispered. Stronger, smarter, better. I nodded. I had to be. I didn't have the luxury of depending on someone else. I grew because I chose to, not because I needed to prove anything to you. She bit her lip, words failing her. I paused, letting the silence stretch, allowing her to feel the weight of her own mistakes. I could humiliate you now, I said quietly, voice calm. I could make everyone know what you were, how you left, how you underestimated me. But that isn't me anymore. Her eyes glistened with tears. You're not angry? I shook my head slowly. I am. But I've learned control. I've learned growth. And I've learned that revenge isn't about showing others. It's about proving to myself that I can rise above. She exhaled shakily, finally understanding the lesson I had earned through years of struggle. I stood ready to leave. Take care, Mia, I said simply. She nodded, watching me go silent. I walked out of the cafe, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders, the sense of moral victory settling deep inside. For the first time in years, I was free. I watched from my office window as the news alert popped up on my phone. Mia's company faces major setback. Key client withdraws contract. I exhaled slowly, letting the words settle. My first instinct wasn't gloating, it was reflection. So this is what she's dealing with, I muttered to myself. May looked over my shoulder. Is that? I nodded briefly. Yes. Circumstances catching up with her. My phone buzzed again, a message from an old mutual friend. Mia's asking about your company, seems curious, even regretful. I smiled faintly. I didn't respond. Let her watch from a distance. There was a satisfaction in observing karma unfold naturally. Later that week, I ran into her at a professional seminar. She looked different. Stressed, slightly disheveled, eyes darting as if she was calculating her next move. She approached hesitantly. I heard about your latest project. Congratulations, she said, voice small. I nodded, calm. Thank you, Mia. I appreciate that. She bit her lip. I can see now what I lost. You've changed everything. I studied her carefully. Yes, I've grown. Not because of you, but despite the choices you made. She winced at the words, her pride struggling to hide her regret. I didn't realize how wrong I was, she admitted. Seeing you succeed, it's painful. I exhaled quietly, feeling the bitter mix of triumph and melancholy. It's supposed to be, I said softly. It's part of life. Consequences have a way of revealing the truth. She looked down, voice trembling. I guess I underestimated you, your drive, your strength. I made choices I can't undo. I kept my composure, letting her feel the weight of her own actions. We all make choices, I said, but only some of us take responsibility and learn. I did that. You are still learning, it seems. She swallowed, words failing her, and I allowed the silence to stretch. My heart throbbed with the memory of our past, the heartbreak, humiliation, and rejection, but I had moved past the raw anger. I realized that observing her struggle without intervening gave me more satisfaction than revenge ever could. I see you've learned much, she murmured finally. I smiled faintly. I hope you do. Life has a way of teaching lessons, Mia. Some are harsh, some subtle, but all are deserved. She nodded, almost reverently, then looked away, lost in her own reflection. I turned back to my work, feeling the bittersweet release of closure. The boy she left behind, the humiliated, broken me, would have wanted to confront her, demand apologies, maybe even humiliate her in return. But that boy no longer existed. I had grown, evolved, and learned that true power lay in restraint and self-mastery. This is life, I whispered, watching her retreat, struggling to regain footing. We rise, we fall, we endure. And sometimes, karma quietly balances the scales. I returned to my desk, heart heavy but clear-headed, a mixture of satisfaction and melancholy settling inside me. The world moved on. So had I. And for the first time I felt complete, not because of revenge but because of growth, resilience, and the quiet, unspoken justice of life. I sat in my office, sunlight streaming through the windows, and let out a slow breath. It's quiet, peaceful, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. May passed by, glancing at me. You've come a long way, she said softly. I smiled faintly. We all have, I replied. But I've learned to walk my own path, not defined by anyone else. Mr. Chin leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. You finally look like you're at ease, he said. It suits you. I chuckled lightly. It's been a long journey. From that boy crushed by words to this. He nodded, silent for a moment, then added, You've grown not just in business but in control, in patience, in understanding yourself. I felt a quiet pride. I never wanted to just succeed for revenge, I admitted. I wanted to grow beyond the hurt. And in the process everything else came. A notification buzzed on my phone, another industry milestone, positive coverage. I glanced at it, then slipped it aside. Recognition feels good, I whispered, but it's not the same as knowing I've truly moved on. My mind drifted briefly to Mia. I hadn't needed to confront her again. I'd seen her regrets unfold from a distance, felt the subtle shifts in her demeanor when she realized the choices she'd made. I don't need her approval, I said softly. I never did. Later I called Lynn, one of my partners. Everything is running smoothly. Your team is excellent, I said. Thank you. Your guidance helped a lot, he replied. I smiled, feeling the weight of mentorship, of alliances, of people who had supported me rather than doubted me. It's been a long road, I continued, and we've all grown together. I hung up, leaning back in my chair, fingers steepled. I thought about the nights of struggle, the crises with Leo, the careful strategies, the moments when I felt the old pain rise again. I survived, I whispered. I adapted. I became more than the boy she dismissed. May returned, holding a cup of coffee. Are you reflecting again? She asked, a teasing tone hiding genuine respect. Maybe, I said, taking a sip. I'm reflecting on what mattered. Not her, not the grudges, but me. Who I became, who I want to be. Mr. Chin appeared again, quietly. And who is that? He asked. I smiled faintly, eyes distant but clear. Someone who defines himself. Someone who respects himself, his journey, and his own growth. He nodded approvingly. That's a rare kind of success. The office hummed softly, employees focused but aware of the quiet triumph in the room. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the day sink in. I've learned patience, resilience, and self-worth, I whispered. I've learned that revenge isn't about others. It's about proving to myself that I can rise above. I opened my eyes, looking out over the city skyline, the world bright and full of possibilities. The past shaped me, I admitted quietly, but it doesn't define me anymore. I've moved on, fully. And finally I'm free. I smiled faintly, a calm, unshakable satisfaction warming me. I had won, not through humiliation or vindictiveness, but through growth, understanding, and unwavering self-respect. And that was more powerful than I had ever imagined.